Okay, we're ready. Yes, I have 5 tips that are definitely going to help you on race day. Hey guys, my name is Ryan Styles Harris. Welcome back to another video. In this one, we're going to be going over some tips that are going to be essential to those of you that are either thinking about racing RC or maybe even doing it for a little while, but some consistencies and stuff just happens on race day and it's just not going so well. So hopefully these tips are going to help you dial in some consistency and just do better. Very excited to announce that today's video will be sponsored by Skillshare. More on that in a moment. So you're out there at the RC track. Things are going good until they don't. Maybe you broke, maybe the car overheated and it didn't finish. Maybe it's just inconsistent and the car just isn't handling well. If those are the cases for you, well then hopefully these tips are going to help you avoid those things or just kind of learn more about them so that these things aren't going to plague you on race day. Before we jump into that, we're going to take a quick minute and actually head to the dirt bike track so that we can take a word from today's sponsor. What is Skillshare, you ask? Skillshare is an online learning community for passionate creators like yourselves. It lets you explore all kinds of new skills or deepen your current passions and interests. There's tons of different classes you can take on here, from web design, graphic design, all kinds of internet-based stuff, or you can actually do some classes that teach you the old school stuff. Here we can see that there's a really cool woodworking techniques class. This class is put on by Dr. Ian Bronowski, and he walks us through some of the basics of some woodworking techniques. And you can see here that we have kind of like a playlist of some different topics. You can see the runtime of each class. And this is great because you can jump in and out of whichever ones you want at any time to help you with whatever project you're wanting to learn more about. It's basically just meant to learn. It's specifically curated for creativity. And they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. Ugh. Did I get it? I think I got it. So, the cool part, Skillshare is giving the first 1,000 of my subscribers a special offer in the link down below. It's a 1-month free trial. You got nothing to lose, so see if there's a class you're interested in, or make that kid of yours who has nothing to do this summer. Sign him up for that woodworking class and teach him something useful, besides looking at TikTok all day or something. Okay, so jumping into this thing, 5 tips. First tip, we're gonna learn how to use these things over here. Now, there's 2 tools that I have sitting here. One is used for checking ride height, which is super essential to getting right and making sure you know what it is and then playing with some of those settings throughout race day. The second tool is going to be used for camber, and that's gonna be our second tip. But first, how do you set ride height and how do you check it and set it properly? So the first thing that you're going to want to do is start with a perfectly flat surface. To some of you, this may seem very obvious, but there's been times where I've kind of watched people in the pits at tracks and events, and they're doing it with some very inconsistent surfaces, whether it's warped or it's got a bunch of bumps in it, and they're just trying to eyeball it and figure it's close enough, and it probably works, but it doesn't work as well as if you use one of these, a pit board. A pit board is going to be super essential to making sure that you can know exactly what your setup is in regards to its ride height. We have our vehicle, and we have our ride height gauge, and we have our setup board. With all of these things combined, this is what you're going to want to do. Take the car, compress the suspension a little bit, kind of wake it up, if you will. Once you know that nothing is stiff and you've kind of reworked all of the suspension components, give it one last little compress like so, bring it up, and then drop it from about yay high. That's going to give it its natural resting place. Now you can check the ride height. If you don't do that, and let's just say the car was sitting on the bench for quite a while, and then you just kind of scooted it over and checked the ride height, I can almost guarantee you that it's going to be way off as to the standard method of measuring ride height. I'm gonna let you in a little pro tip. Consider this bonus tip 1.5. If you can give it just a little bit of a roll when you drop it, The theory is that you can avoid some compression in these foam inserts and let the tire roll to a natural resting position. You, my friend, are a professional ride height setter. I don't even know if I can do it. I've seen some of the pros do it sometimes, but it's kind of tricky. Let's see if we can do it here. So we kind of kit it up. That was close. Let me try it again. That's pretty close. Just that little bit of roll to kind of roll past a potential flat spot on the insert. That's not going to be hypercritical or necessary, but if you're really getting down to the super oomph detail, technically you could do that. Why did I start with ride height first? Because, as most of us know, and if you don't, well, now you will, when the car is moving through its suspension stroke, whether it's fully compressed or it's at the top, the camber position is going to change slightly on the wheels all the way around the vehicle. So if you were to check the camber with the wheel all the way compressed, so just for fun, if you compress it all the way down and you checked your camber, that would be one setting. And there's a little bit of a gap there. It's important to set your ride height first and then move on to your camber setting. Tip number 2, we started with ride height. Now that that's correct, let's move on to our camber adjustment. Now I put them in this order specifically. I'll briefly try to explain. It's important to make sure that we are setting our camber at the proper ride height. So give it a couple compressions, drop it down to that natural resting point again, and then give it a measure. Now there's something to look out for. This may or may not be a factor for you, but especially with these off-road vehicles, when they're jumping around and crashing and doing all kinds of crazy things, you may see the tire kind of offset from top to bottom. What do I mean? You can kind of shove the tire in, get it all tweaked so that if you were measuring its camber, at this point of the tire, it may measure a certain way. But at the bottom, if you were kind of flip that over to the top, well, now it looks like your camber is 2 degrees off. So something that I like to do if I suspect something like that is going on is kind of roll the car forward and then measure it again. So kind of consider that pro tip 2.5, if you will, to get a super accurate camber measurement. Moving on to tip number 3, one thing that I like to do throughout the race day, and especially right before I go out for my main event, is give the car a thorough look over and make sure that everything is tight. I can speak from experience, the amount of times that I forgot to check maybe a shock nut or a standoff or a ball stud screw, and it just kind of slowly was wobbling out. And then wouldn't you know it, in the middle of my race, that sucker came flying right out. And as I was surely destined to win the race, I suddenly was dashed upon the rocks of lack of preparation. So, my suggestion for things to check over, you don't have to go through every single screw in the vehicle. I suppose you can if you want to, but my quick checklist is going to be shock standoffs. Check them, make sure they're tight. Usually this will require a couple different wrenches because there's screws or nuts on both sides. Next up are gonna be your ball stud screws. A lot of times in today's vehicles, these are going to be some metal screws going into a metal ball stud or a caster camber hat, whatever you want to call it. And if you don't Loctite those or tighten them down properly or just check them periodically throughout time, they'll definitely wiggle themselves out and they can spell disaster for your race event. And last but not least, check your wheel nuts. You don't want to be that guy with your wheels falling off in the middle of the race. It's just embarrassing. Okay. Tip number 4, charge an extra battery. Now this may not sound like something that is a speed tip or a pro tip. You're like sitting there, wow, Ryan, really? Charge your battery? Well, hang on a second. Let's just say that you're on the path to possibly winning today's local club race event. Along the way, in first and second rounds of qualifying, you encountered some issues, some struggles where in qualifier number 1, you crashed right in front of the marshal that's just too busy tweeting or looking at TikTok on his phone and just totally ignores your car. So there goes your first run of the day. Let's say in the second run, going great, but then there's that guy. He's taken you out at least the last 3 times at your local club race, and guess what? Today's gonna be number 4. So you're on the TQ run, you didn't make it, now you find yourself in the B main. But your hot laps, the potential pace, it's all there. All you gotta do is get into the A main. So you did it. You won the B main. You're going fast. We're going into the show. But guess what? You just finished your B main and the A main is up in 2 heats. What are you gonna do? Your battery is definitely dead after that phenomenal performance you just put on to bump through the B main. We definitely don't have enough time to charge that battery back up to full capacity so that we can go out and show them how it's done in the A main. So rather than try to blow up your battery and charge it at 100 million amps so that you can possibly make it there in time with half a battery pack, let's just say that you charged up that extra battery pack at the very beginning of the day, and guess what? Now it came in handy. It's time. Put it to use and you can show the boys how it's done. All in all, in that fictional lovely story of something that's probably a little bit too close to reality for most of us, charge an extra battery because you never know when you might need it. Maybe you forgot to charge your battery, and guess what's easier? Asking for a minute's grace to just swap out from a dead battery to a full one, or asking for a minute's grace and then trying to charge your battery and then everybody up on the driver's stand is mad because 3 minutes later and you're still not ready. We don't want that situation. If you have an extra battery, charge it up, sit it on the table, it's ready to go, so that way, worst case scenario, when you have to get it done in the A main, you'll be ready. Okay, last tip. Tip number 5, build the buddy system. Over the past few years, I've found it to be tremendously important for myself to focus on at least making contact with a new person or touching base with a few of my regular friends to ensure that we're building a nice environment at our local tracks. I kind of have this mental note of every single time I go to the track, I seek out an opportunity to possibly give a fellow racer a spare part if he broke his car. Maybe if I have an extra set of tires and he's looking like he's a little bit rough going into his main event, I try to share them with him if I can. Doing things like this will help other people enjoy the hobby a little bit more, and then they can possibly pass on the same kind of mentality to others at the track. Rather than if we're just a bunch of guys that are there and we're super competitive and keeping secrets from one another and hoping that so-and-so breaks so that he doesn't run his main. I've seen those kind of environments and they're just not fun, and they definitely won't help sustain this hobby that we love for the generations to come. I'm a huge advocate of building out as many buddies in this hobby as possible, because in a practical sense, it may turn around to help you in the end. It's kind of like a reap what you sow mentality. If you kind of sow a bunch of good deeds, that maybe some of those will be willing to return the favor. I hope that this doesn't turn into a selfish kind of endeavor, but I really just hope that with this kind of attitude, we can help cultivate a better environment for ourselves at the track and everyone around us. Well, there you have it. 5 very essential tips for race day and ensuring that we have a more consistent race program and just an all-around better, more fun environment when we're at the track. Because at the end of the day, I want you guys to be going fast, getting consistent lap times out there, and having fun with your friends at the track. Because if we're not doing those things, why are we doing this? So again, I just wanted to say thank you to Skillshare for jumping in and sponsoring today's video. I think it's super cool that somebody totally outside the world of RC has kind of stepped in to support the cause. Who would have thought that a bunch of guys racing toy cars would kind of come together and make something cool like we're doing here on this channel. So thanks to them and thanks to you guys. And of course, I need to give a huge special shout out to everyone on my Patreon. Everyone up here right now, thank you guys all so much. I've been trying to post a little bit more content on the Patreon for you guys because I know it's a little bit behind the scenes stuff, nothing super top secret, but it is fun sharing with you guys a little bit ahead of time the stuff that we got planned on the channel. And of course, I need to give a huge special shout out to all of my top tier supporters, starting with Brandon Helton, Robert Black, Tim Juskiewicz, Brad Persons, and of course, Alex Johnson. Thank you guys, I really appreciate it. Nailed that right as my watch alarm went off. Couldn't have timed that more perfectly. If you guys have any tips that you like to share with everyone, please drop it in a comment down below. Maybe you got another useful tip to help people keep their wheels on their vehicle and rolling forward and winning on race day. If you have any questions, feel free to drop those down below as well. Please give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you're not. Turn the little bell on for notifications so you can stay posted when we throw up all these super speed secrets and stuff like that here on the channel. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace. How crazy would it be one day if somebody from Monster Energy was like, yo, this RC stuff, it's cool. We're jumping in. It's not gonna happen.